Welcome.do you know how Makita. One when other companies fail, walk into any hardware store today. You'll see the same battle being fought on every shelf, bright yellow and red. Boxes, bigger logos, bolder claims, power tool brands. Competing for your attention like sneaker. Company sponsorships, influencers. Flashy product drops every single year, and then sitting quietly in the corner. Often in plain teal and black. Packaging that hasn't dramatically changed in decades. There's Makita. Here's the part most people don't know: almost every major tool brand you can name has been bought, sold, merged or folded into a larger conglomerate at some point. DeWalt is owned by Stanley Black & Decker. Milwaukee is owned by a Hong Kong-based holding company, Rigid. Ryobi, AEG, all consolidated under corporate umbrellas chasing quarterly targets. Makita hasn't, not once, not in 111 years. So the question isn't just how does a company survive that long. It's how does a company survive that long without selling itself out? And the answer to that question tells you almost everything about why professionals trust this brand with their livelihood. The story doesn't start with a power tool at all. It starts in Nagoya, Japan, in 1915, when Mosaburo Makita and Jujiro Goto founded a small company with a very unglamorous job, repairing and selling electric motors and lighting equipment for over 4 decades, 43 years. To be exact, this is essentially all the company did. No flagship product. No global ambition. Yet, just motors, generators, transformers, and the day-to-day work of fixing what other people had broken. It's tempting to skip past this part of the story because it doesn't look like the dramatic founding myth we expect from a major brand. There's no garage moment, no single light bulb idea, but this is actually the most important chapter in the entire company's history because of what it taught them. When you spend 4 decades doing nothing but diagnosing why motors fail, what burns out, what overheats, what wears down under stress, what causes a winding to short, you don't just learn how to fix things, you build an institutional memory of failure itself. You learn the difference between a motor that fails in 6 months and one that lasts 20 years. And you learn it not from theory, but from having thousands of broken motors pass through your hands. That knowledge doesn't disappear. It becomes culture, and in 1958, that culture finally found its outlet. In 1958, Makita launched its first power tool, the Model 1000 electric planer. On the surface, this looks like just another product launch, but contextually, it's the moment 4 decades of motor repair expertise gets weaponized into a commercial product. Most tool companies in this era were approaching the market from the opposite direction. They were mechanical engineers or manufacturers who added a motor to an existing tool. Makita came at it backwards. They were motor specialist first, who built a tool around a motor they already understood intimately. This distinction matters more than it sounds like it should. A power tool's single point of failure more often than not is the motor. Bearings wear, brushes degrade, windings overheat under load. A company that spent 43 years specifically studying motor failure has a structural advantage that's almost impossible for a competitor to copy quickly because you can't shortcut 4 decades of repair tickets. The Model 1000 wasn't just Makita's first tool. It was the first product built on a foundation no competitor had. Here's where the story takes a turn that almost never happens in corporate history. By 1963, just 5 years after entering the power tool business, Makita became entirely debt-free, and it didn't just pay off some old obligations and call it a milestone. The company adopted financial self-sufficiency as an operating principle going forward. To understand why this matters, you have to understand how most American and European tool companies actually grow. The standard playbook involves borrowing capital, often heavily, to fund expansion, acquisitions, and aggressive market share grabs. Then, when growth slows or the economy tightens, those companies become vulnerable to private equity buyouts. What's often called corporate stripping, where a company is acquired, its costs slashed, its workforce reduced, and its assets sold off, all to satisfy debt holders and shareholders demanding returns. Makita simply opted out of that entire system. By funding its global expansion exclusively through retained earnings money the company actually made and kept, rather than money it borrowed, Makita made itself nearly impossible to take over. You can't leverage a buyout against a company that owes nothing to anyone. This single decision in 1963 is arguably the reason Makita is still independent in 2026. Every other major brand's vulnerability to acquisition traces back to debt and shareholder pressure. Makita removed both from the equation decades before it would have mattered. Financial independence is one thing, but where you really feel Makita's philosophy as a customer is in a detail most people glance right past: battery compatibility. In 2005, Makita introduced the LXT 18-volt lithium-ion battery platform. Today, in 2026, that platform is still alive, and a battery from over 2 decades ago will still work in many of the tools Makita sells right now. 21 years of backward compatibility and counting. Think about what that actually means in practice. A tradesperson who invested in Makita batteries when that platform launched hasn't been forced to rebuild their entire tool collection from scratch every time the company released something new. Compare that to industries and other tool brands that quietly retire battery formats every few years, conveniently right around the time a new and improved platform launches that requires you to buy in all over again. There's a name for that practice when it's done deliberately: planned obsolescence. It's a powerful growth lever because it forces repeat purchases. And Makita, by every indication, chose not to use it. Why? Because a company funded by its own earnings, answering to no outside debt holders, doesn't need to engineer artificial demand. It just needs to make tools good enough that professionals keep choosing them, which is a much harder, much slower way to grow. And exactly the kind of long game a company chasing next quarter's earnings can't afford to play now. Makita isn't a company that has never made an acquisition. In 1991, it purchased Saxe-Dolmar, a respected German manufacturer known for chainsaws and outdoor power equipment. This is worth highlighting specifically because of what didn't happen afterward. The typical pattern when a larger company acquires a respected smaller manufacturer is predictable. Production gets moved to cheaper facilities. Engineering teams get downsized or dissolved. Parts get standardized to cut costs. And within a few years the brand becomes a badge stuck on a product it has nothing to do with designing. Makita didn't do that with Saxe-Dolmar. The German engineering team, manufacturing standards, and product integrity were preserved rather than dismantled. Instead of stripping the brand for parts and margin, Makita treated the acquisition as a way to add genuine engineering capability into its portfolio. It's a small case study, but it's consistent with everything else in this story. A company that isn't under pressure from debt holders or activist investors doesn't need to extract maximum short-term value from every purchase it makes. It can afford to ask a different question. Does this make the whole company's engineering better? With Saxe-Dolmar. The answer was clearly yes, and Makita acted accordingly. None of this means Makita is winning every battle. Brands like Milwaukee and DeWalt have become genuinely dominant, especially among younger tradespeople. And a huge part of that dominance comes down to marketing, aggressive social media presence, sponsorships, constant new product drops, bold branding that photographs well on a job site and performs well on a phone screen. Makita, by comparison, can look almost old-fashioned next to that energy. It doesn't chase trends with the same intensity. Its branding hasn't been dramatically reinvented to match short-form video culture. If you're judging purely by who's louder online, Makita is often losing that fight. But spend time around career tradespeople, the ones who've been running tools professionally for 15, 20, 30 years, and you'll notice something different. Loyalty to Makita tends to deepen with experience, not fade. It's a brand that wins converts slowly, tool by tool, job by job, rather than through a single viral moment. Many professionals say the same thing in different words. The marketing didn't sell them. The tool simply didn't fail when it mattered.